evening, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to share. So let me find the right tab. And can you see my screen?
Yes.
Awesome. Delighted to be here with everyone, and thanks for the introduction. We'll talk a little bit about Compass. We'll talk a little bit about platforms in general. If you have questions, you can throw them into the in-call messages. I'm able to see them, and let's have an open conversation. I would love to. I can also talk about other things as well. I'm one of the founders of IXDA, so there's a history and a story there too. If we have time, if people are interested in it. I want to start today and just recognize one thing, which is, we have all been through a lot over the last 2 years, and where we are right now in the world itself is not a great place. There are some things going on that we're all aware of in Ukraine and in other places. So there's a quote that's really meaningful for me that we'll start with today, and it's from Paul Hawken, who's sort of a futurist and someone who's written some interesting books on intelligence. And he says, "When asked if I'm pessimistic or optimistic about the future, my answer is always the same. If you look at the science about what is happening on Earth and aren't pessimistic, you don't understand data. But if you meet the people who are working to restore this Earth and the lives of the poor, and you aren't optimistic, you haven't got a pulse. What I see everywhere in the world are ordinary people willing to confront despair, power, and incalculable odds in order to restore some semblance of grace, justice, and beauty to this world." This is a quote a little about the environmental crisis that we find ourselves in, but it could be appropriate for many other things, including the pandemic and the war that's going on right now. But what I like to think is that communities like this with design are always full with optimism that Paul is referring to. And the things that we do in our careers are about changing the lives of people for the better. And for me, one of the reasons why interaction design has been such a part of my career is that we get the opportunity to create experiences that are meaningful for people and make material differences in their lives. All right, so this is kind of a hybrid conversation. I'm going to start with an introduction to Compass, tell a little bit about us. I'm going to talk a little about why I think platforms matter today and why they're interesting for designers, and why, if you're a designer, verticals like a Compass are a really interesting place to work, and then some things to share from Compass, so you can see a little bit of what we're up to along the way. And I think I'm very much interested. Obviously, Alok set up this notion of machine learning and artificial intelligence, new modalities, and I think some of this is changing also how we as designers show up at work. It's not just that we are moving the pixels around on the screen or defining flows. We're actually shaping outcomes through the platforms that we're in, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. So who's Compass? Well, Compass is a real estate technology company. We have been in business for about 9 years. We started in New York City and are now in 54 different metro areas in the United States. We cover over 50% of the US market. We're the fastest growing brokerage in the United States. And currently have about 9% market share of the US real estate market. And we're a little bit different than some of the other technology companies in the real estate space, in that we're not trying to disrupt the real estate agent. Our business model is actually to make the real estate agent the most successful version of themselves in a very human way as possible, so that they can service their clients more effectively. And the business model itself is really actually quite simple. It's a Compass agent has the highest gross commission income per agent for the lowest cost to serve. And the lowest cost to serve is managed by building a platform that helps them be successful. And the ability to sell more is connected to having tools that allow them to be more effective real estate agents in the communities that they work in. It's a very, very, very simple structure. Whatever is good for them is actually good for us. And I love being in an organization where our goals are very much aligned with the users that we're building for. And we'll talk a little bit more about why this is also interesting in verticals, because the cohort we're designing for is a very specific one, a group of people who help people find the home that they want to live. And the space, one of the things that makes Compass interesting is, buying a home, it's a very important part of people's lives. It's not getting married or having a child, but it's in the top 10 things that you do. And it's certainly the most expensive financial transaction that you make in your life. You don't do it very often. And when you do it, you want to make sure you're doing it the right way. And so having an expert, an agent that really can help you, whether you're buying or selling or doing both, is really important. And so, our mission is to ultimately help people find the place that makes sense for them, and to support agents in growing their careers and being as successful as possible. And I'll come back to Compass in a moment, but we're going to shift for a second and talk a little bit about platforms. So platforms themselves, they offer significant business advantages for first movers. When a company produces services and has incentive structures that align with their users, that can deliver really great business success. And we're seeing that in Compass because we continue to grow very fast. And in the markets that we enter, we very quickly become the #1 brokerage in that community. And so, Compass itself is showing a model where, mediated tools and rethinking how work gets done can help people be more successful. When you do it well, and they do well, we do well, then you're onto something. So, we're all familiar with disruptive platforms. This is not a new topic. There are many that are out there. You can even think of some platforms that are coming out of India. So, this is not news. But if you think about financial services, things like Stripe or Square have changed the financial services industry. In the logistics side, Uber and Lyft. In terms of housing, Airbnb, and just computing infrastructure, the Googles and Amazons of the world are adding all of these capabilities that allow organizations to build differently than they have in the past. And part of the reason why this is so powerful is that there's a new tech stack, right? And the tech stack enables companies to move more nimbly, more quickly, and the materiality of software is much easier, meaning development teams can build with APIs and assemble from platform services, a lot of new capabilities. So, I think one of the things that's changing is that we can start to think about, experience as a service, and that from the UX perspective. There's new UI toolkits, the foundation of using design systems, whether you have built one yourself or you're using one of the ones that are out there, like Material from Google. These all allow us to move much, much faster. If you think about I don't know how many people use Figma, but if you think about the tool Figma, it's a really powerful tool that's changing the way that we work. We can move so much faster than we could before, and share and partner with our engineering peers in a way that allows speed and iteration in a long way. Yeah, you can put questions in the sidebar. And we also think about software as a service. In a way, Compass is software as a service. It's a platform. We offer applications for our agents that they can use, and you can build reference applications from that. And they sit on top of platforms as a service, which is chunks of functionality. You think about like identity as a service, or messaging as a service, or a variety of different things that we use, but we can now assemble those without having to build them from scratch, and that gives teams speed and the ability to move quickly. And then obviously infrastructure as a service, that's the Googles of the world that are providing, or the Amazons of the world that are providing cloud native services that development teams can pull information off of. And then finally, you're getting into this sort of business model as a service, subscription and share economies. In the case of Compass, we do two things in our business model. One, the real estate business in the United States is based on commissions. And so we are a brokerage, technology enabled. So part of the way we get paid or generate revenue is on every time a agent sells or helps a client buy or sell property, there's a commission. We get a percentage of that commission. But we also add additional services to the agents that they can purchase that help them be more effective. And so, you start to think about these novel ways to, at scale, add new capabilities. And all that sort of adds up to a new way to build, a new way to get to outcomes. And platforms in general are super valuable for being able to do that. And so it also changes a little bit the way that we operate, right? You can think about this notion of a DevOps culture, where you've got the ability to be in continuous improvement and iteration, that you can release new features very quickly and deprecate them if they don't work out properly. You don't have to support previous versions of software, so you're only serving the software that you're running at that moment. The end of this, the end of the PRD, you don't have to do product specs as tightly as we used to have to, and you can chunk problems into much smaller things. Okay, let's see. I'll just look at a question. How are you taking bias? Okay, there's a question about biases, tackling biases. So we'll talk about that in a moment.
Yeah, I think Greg will take all the questions of that last. I don't want to stop you.
So, we'll get them to the end. That's great. Cool. And so we're in this moment where we're changing from sort of systems of record, that's kind of the SAPs of the world at large scale, to systems of engagement. And then there's sort of systems of assets where, you think about services that are really connected to the individual. This is part of the IoT, Internet of Things revolution. But we're really getting to a point where the human is in the middle of all of this, and relationships, the temporal moment, what's happening. We have, these, if you build a platform the right way, we know lots and lots of information about who you are and what you're doing and what you might find interesting. We know where you are, because a lot of these platforms are mobile first, and therefore, we have telemetry coming off your mobile device. And we have these sort of single app experiences that are very dedicated towards how you're operating. And so we can change the way that we build software to make it more of an offer versus something that you have to look for and discover. In our particular case, in real estate, real estate agents are constantly on the move. They're showing properties to their customers. So if I'm in front of a property, I know where you are because I can pull the GPS data off of your phone. I know who your current clients are. I know what projects you're currently working on or what homes that you're planning on sharing. Why can I not just promote all that information to the top of your screen without you having to look for it? Because I know a lot about what's going on in your day. And so this is one of the things I think that's happening from a user experience perspective, and why platforms are so interesting, is that they have so much data, contextual data about the community of users, that if you use it wisely and you have permission to use it in their interest, you can provide utility and usefulness that is really, really super valuable for people. And so we use this term context first. People have sort of thought about mobile first as a concept, but in Compass we call it context first. And it's really about understanding where the individual is and what is the right device for them at that moment. Is it mobile? Is it their desktop? Is it a hybrid between the two? Is it a tablet? Where are they? Are they in line at the market? Is it the beginning of their day? Are they with a client showing a home? And so understanding that context is very valuable. And it turns out, if you look at the 24-hour arc of a real estate agent, their day is wildly different from the morning to the evening, and they usually work all day long. I mean, they have gaps in between, but they're looking at, the first thing they do when they wake up is to see if there are any new properties that have come online, and if they have to answer any questions for their clients. And the last thing they do at the end of the day is to make sure that they're following up with any inquiries or helping with lead management, trying to find new customers. And in between, they bounce around between lots and lots of different things. Actually, I'll go back to this in a second. And so, there are a couple of things that mediate this, right? So algorithms can determine that experience. We can use AI to make inferences and best guess. You'll hear a lot of teams now talk about the term next best action. We can bring to your attention something that would be valuable for you to do next based on predicting it, based on your previous behavior, or what other agents have done, or what other people have done in the network. And these are all things which are valuable. You have to be careful about that, because you also have to give people permissions to set boundaries, so that they feel that they have agency over how much you're telling them what to do versus their own expertise. And one of the things that's interesting about Compass is we're not actually trying to, there isn't like a Compass way of doing real estate. We're building a platform that allows each individual agent in Compass to be the real estate agent they want to be, and to practice their business the way that they think it should be practiced. And so we have a very a broad diversity of agent personas that behave differently. We have people who are very data driven and work with data driven clients. We have people who are very relationship driven and work with people who want hand holding through their process. We have people who know a lot about the neighborhood and the community, and can advocate for schools and restaurants and lifestyle with their clients. And so agents are not a homogenous group. They're very heterogeneous. And so the getting context right is really important. You have to get integration of disparate systems and data, and put those things together. And one of the things that's great about platforms is that if you have a really solid engineering team, you can bring all these APIs to pull data from different sources, and the juxtaposition of different data gives designers the opportunity to offer novel solutions. And again, this is why I think platforms are really interesting to work with. And I encourage people to think about this when you're thinking about the next job that you're taking. Look for a platform company, or a company that's built on platform foundations. And there's sort of two paths that you can take. You can work for something like a Freshworks, which is a big Indian tech company that has a generic solution for industry, or you can work for something like a Compass, where we're building a platform, but it's for a very specific group of people. And I actually think that's where the most interesting design work is, because we really get to tailor things to fit and finish to the users that we're using, versus some of the more generic platform plays. And obviously, you can build a behavioral model at the bottom of all this that connects to things that you're getting from telemetry off of the systems, and qualitative and quantitative research that you may be doing to understand your users. So now what? What does that mean? Well, one of the things that's interesting and I think is really valuable for designers is that no one really understands these new ingredients. The technologists who build this are just sort of building the Lego bricks and putting it together, and so no one really understands how to put these ingredients together well. There's a lot of ambiguity and uncertainty in organizations as they transition into this. Compass is unique in that we started as a digital technology startup and disrupting the space, but there are other brokerages that have been around for a long time that are trying to digitize or go through digital transformation. And I think in some ways it's much harder for them because they have to understand how to use platform technology without being technology people. And you see that in other industries as well, where people struggle with trying to understand how to take advantage of platform thinking. And then our prediction framework doesn't work anymore. And this is a challenge for business leaders in general. I was talking about Paul Hawken earlier. He wrote this great book called On Intelligence, and the basic construct of that conversation is that IQ, or our ability to answer questions, is connected to experience, and he called the term a prediction framework. So when we make decisions based on our past experience, when the world changes in front of us, our previous experience is usually not very valuable in helping us make new decisions. And therefore, it becomes very hard for people to know what to do in that case. And you can see this, like very experienced CEOs, have a lifespan of about 5 to 10 years. And then they are no longer any good because they're so far away from the reality of the business that if the business conditions on the ground change, they don't see it. And they see the world through the eyes of their learned experience over the time of their careers. And so we're in this same moment in terms of the way we build software. And the people who figure it out are leaning into it. But the one thing I think is really interesting about this is how to build is solved. If you can work on a team that's building a cloud service model with APIs, and you see that a lot with India tech startups, and you're seeing it obviously in the US. It's harder for traditional companies to do this because they're still sort of in that hybrid world of on-prem technology. But it's solved. But what isn't solved is what to build and why. That I think is a real challenge in the communities that we work in. And this is where I think folks from this community, from design, have a really powerful opportunity to be way more strategic than we have been in the past. We all have product partners. Our product partners are good at sort of understanding outcomes, but they don't actually work in the tools. And the tools are so fast now that when we start making things, we can actually be more product oriented than we may have in the past. So that's what we do. We come in, we help people understand ambiguity. Part of the designer's toolkit is to do research, to form synthesis of ideas, to generate outcomes, and frame things. And so, I think where we're headed to right now, and this is part of what we're trying to do with the team at Compass, is really make design core to the strategy of the organization. And it's a beginning of a role change for the designer. We're not just, we're moving away from being a service to the product organization to being real partners with them. And some of the things that are making this happen is that research still matters, and actually really understanding your users is really valuable. And at Compass, one of the things that we're doing is we've invested heavily in user research. We have a user research team right now that's about 25 people. pre-pandemic, we spent a lot of time, riding along with agents in their day. We're starting to do that again now. During the pandemic, we did a lot of qualitative studies to really understand them, and we are very lucky that our CEO is a very customer backwards person. He basically is always arguing that the customer knows what they're looking for and how they work, and the way that we build is to understand them by, watching them, talking to them, being as close as possible. We're very good at abductive thinking, right? So the design community, we're very good at what if, and what if is there's a term that a friend of mine who was trying to understand what an interaction designer does, and after we had a long conversation, he said, "Oh, I know what you are. You're an if-nographer, and you're the person who is discovering what if and how does what if something come to reality." And so we're more comfortable with ambiguity than a lot of people because we have tools that allow us to shape it. And one of the ways we do that is through juxtaposition. And this is, one of the classic things from a designer's education. It doesn't really matter what kind of background you came in from design, but we know how to put two disparate things together. And in the exploration of putting those two things together, a better thing occurs to us. And we do that through making, and that's our secret skill. And I think the important aspect of this is the thing that we bring today is to make to think over thinking to make. And many of us have been in organizations where there's a lot of discussion about what to build. And then when you start getting into the actual design work and you start looking at the low fidelity wireframes, and then you move them to more higher fidelity wireframes, the outcome actually shifts because that making informs your thinking. And my argument, and I think this is one of the opportunities for us as a community, is we should do that more often earlier and have less words, more artifacts as we start to describe the solutions that we're trying to create for users. And when we do that, we bring our product partners along in a much faster way, and we are more likely to get something that's delightful and meaningful for end users. And this is why I think our roles are changing. We're headed into a different spot. I think the current enterprise today, design is, very organized around fundamentals, making things easier. Wireframes do matter. Projects are more bespoke and custom. We lean on product requirement documents, process drives rewards in organizations. That's kind of the place that many of us find ourselves in. I think we're moving towards what I would call, and some people are already here, a contextual enterprise, where business models matter. There's customer centricity, co-creation, make to think exercises start to show up more often. We get more effective collaboration with our roles between product and design and engineering. Things are getting simpler, and organizations are using design thinking and lean startup methods in their practices. And then there's a sort of future AI enterprise where we're doing customer co-innovation. We have adaptive product development, meaning we can put things into we can deliver experiments live to our customer community and see how they're operating. We start to think of things like AI journey maps, where we can use tools like process mining to discern the path that people are taking. And we're getting much more into problem framing as a community. More of our time is spent at that earlier strategic level before we get into the work, because our tools are so fast. And we're moving into much more, customized workflows for niche, high-value activities, which is sort of where we're headed. And in that space, we're spending more and more of our time, if we do our job right, being strategically important to the business. And so I think where this is really about changing how we're seen. In the current enterprise, our skills are often undervalued. We're often late to the party, meaning product has made decisions that we can't unwind. In the future, as we move through this more contextual and AI enterprise, we get into more teachable moments. We have real business partner relationships. Our importance is rising. And finally, where we're really heading is, we're starting to become almost product owners, or at least co-owners. And in the case of Compass, it's really interesting. We went through this transition to a very outcome-based mindset where we are organized by what we call product triads. And we have organized the team into workflow working groups. And the leadership of the triad is a three-legged stool. So we have an engineering leader, a product leader, and a design leader for every workflow and for every sub-workflow at Compass. And it's not a how I put it, all three leaders have to be aligned for work to proceed. So no one of the three has a super vote, and you cannot have a 2-to-1 decision and move forward. You have to all be aligned. And which is really interesting, they're incentivized to work together as partners. If they cannot agree on what to do next, they don't escalate through their role chain, meaning if let's say the engineering leader doesn't agree with the direction, they don't escalate through their engineering leadership. They escalate to the next higher triad in the organization. And it's a really interesting model. It's not perfect, but it's allowing designers in our organization to really have a seat at the table and be true partners in the relationship. And it's one of the reasons why I came to Compass. I have two other peers, the chief product officer and the chief technology officer, and I are the ultimate highest triad. And usually we don't have to make decisions, because if a team comes up to us and says we can't decide, we usually push them back and say, well, you're not working hard enough, work it out. But it is building a culture of co-creation and co-ownership. So this is one of the things I think is interesting about what's going on. I think platforms enable us to do this because the way that we operate and work together is changing so much because of all the technical innovations over the last 4 or 5 years. And so what does it mean for us as a community? We're sort of craftsmen, and we still want to stay craftsmen. We're moving to business partner, and we're moving into being innovators. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens, because I think more of what product traditionally does, we do better. Because we're in the tools, we're actually making very, very fast. Okay, so that was a long story about platforms, and so all these things help us get to where we want to go. And I say this to my teams all the time: make to think, overthinking to make. I like documents, but I'd rather see pictures. We are becoming core to strategy, and my biggest job right now at Compass is, I see my role as sort of creating the conditions for designers to become strategic with their partners. So we'll sneak peek a little bit into some work at Compass, and then hopefully we'll leave some questions for some room for questions. So real estate's a simple business. It's the progression of contacts to leads, leads to appointments, appointments to buyers and sellers to sales, and sales to repeat and referral business. If you understand that well and progress work and do it daily, you can move forward. But it's really about people and connecting people and property and possibility. We've spent an enormous amount of time mapping these progressions, by doing very exhaustive journey maps, very highly detailed. And we built lots of features around them. So, Compass, I think I would say version 1.0 of Compass was we built the kind of kitchen sink of tools for real estate agents to be successful in a singular platform. Agents historically have had to use lots and lots of different tools, and now they can do all of them in Compass. But the moments of these are not connected. So this goes back to the platform thinking I was talking about earlier. What we're trying to do now is sync them and put them together in a way that makes sense. And if they're not synced, it becomes an obstacle to an agent progressing. And so, and there are these moments along the way, but we have in our experience where we've designed different things that in different ways. And so there's a big effort on our team right now on building more cohesive set of simpler things. And we're using design systems to help us get there. I'm a big believer in the least number of most useful things so that people, get familiarity with the affordances that they use. And we have lots of work left to do because of the way we built the platform. So, agents are like, hey, I don't have time to do 20 different things on Compass Academy. I never know how to get to anything. So the big thing that we're in the process of doing right now here is really trying to understand, orientation, learnability, onboarding, dealing with anxiety, and being much more workflow oriented, and using some of the principles I shared in the beginning of this talk around being much more context first. And so we've done a bunch of work recently, audited all of our tools, done a bunch of research, built an Android experiment and learned with much simpler navigation that we have better engagement increases, or getting better feedback. And so that experiment has led to us to a sort of a discovery and navigation hypothesis for us. And so right now we're in the process of what I would call redesign, where we're dramatically simplifying our information architecture to sort of 5 key categories and making our experience much more contextual. And we're rebuilding the platform from a mobile first perspective. Compass originally was built prior to my arrival in a much more sort of desktop first, and then mobile was sort of the second surface. But real estate agents are constantly on the go. They're not at their desks that often. So we are in the process of rebuilding from a mobile perspective. So we built an iOS prototype, and we're testing that now with our agent community. It's content forward. It has sort of 5 core areas. And instead of every piece of our experience having dedicated real estate, we're moving to a model where workflow is invoked in moments in the experience. So make it much more contextual. We're moving to a model where we have, a container with AI-driven components that will show up based on the time of day, location, or who you're working with. And so the experience will modify. It won't be the same every day you look at it. It'll be based on what's happening as an agent in your career at that moment. And so we've done a ton of work on sort of understanding that. And then just inside the organization, we have been breaking down things. We had to teach our team how to do what I would call flow maps to really understand the workflow that's important for agents. It turns out real estate's very complicated. There are a lot of transactions and things like inspections and escrow and title and contracts that they have to shepherd. And so we taught our team how to build, many of you probably know how to do this, but to really get into the boxes and arrows, a defining process. And oftentimes in the past, this might have been something that the product team might have done, but we do this now from design because we moved from here to, we did this in Figma, and then we did this straight to the Figma mocks as part of the experience. And then we're driving mobile first thinking across the organization. So we're taking the structure of the new information architecture and bridging it to desktop. And we're looking at kind of, a more contextual desktop experience that is more, again, straightforward, easy to read, etc. When you do a redesign, you also have an opportunity to do a bunch of other things. So we've been looking at improving data density and how we operate and help select and identify things. So we've been spending a lot of time on like core patterns and filters. We've been looking at our navigation constructs and trying to make that more patterned and consistent and cohesive across the platforms. We've been experimenting with reclaiming unused pixels by doing sticky nav features where we can kind of move things and gain space. Agents like to have lots of data at their disposal. Table density tools. Turns out, our cohort, the average age of a real estate agent in the United States is 57. And people practice real estate until their 70s, some in their 80s. And there's lots of reasons why. So we have a community that also we have to be adaptive for as they age, so that they can manage if they have vision issues or changes to the way that they need to operate. And then lots of things around just simple things that we can do to kind of fix things and tighten things up. And we're also taking the opportunity right now to re-explore color in our experience. Compass is a really strong brand. So we did some work on sort of looking at other platform-based tools and our archetypes. And we're working through that right now, looking at other real estate applications. And looking at productivity apps, because basically what we're building is a productivity application for agents. And then starting to look at palette explorations within our experience right now. So, we basically landed with using color as a way to support productivity. And then the last thing I'll share, and then I'll open up to questions because I know we're coming up on time. Big part of our community is for agents to feel seen. And so we built a content design practice. We built voice and tone guidelines, helping to how we explain and talk to people. We built 5 key tones: empathetic, confident, optimistic, direct, and insightful. And we build those around situation and context again. And so we built a strategy for when to use these and how to use them in calls to action, and in significant moments in the experience we might take a moment and say something. So basically this is sort of our Rosetta Stone. When the customer is learning something, our tone is confident. When they're problem solving, we're committed. And it just gives us the ability to help our design teams kind of know how to write when we use words in the interfaces that we have. So that's it. There's a lot on Compass. I will shamelessly plug the fact that it's a great place to work, and we have lots of open headcount in India. And we have offices in Bangalore, Delhi, and Hyderabad. So with that, I'll let maybe Alok, you can help me with what questions I should answer.